2019 school board meeting is called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item of business is the approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Ms. Carter, is there a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Nilles, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. The next order of business is to amend the agenda that we just approved. So we have to add to the consent item F2, the personnel report. Section K, add school board retreat agenda and schedule. And Section O, notice of closed meeting and certification of closed meeting. So we're going to have a closed meeting at the beginning of the meeting, and then we're going to have one at the end. Any discussion? Motion?
I move to amend the agenda as stated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Harvey? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you. The next order of business is that we need a notice of closed meeting. The school board needs to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following, as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7, for consultation with legal counsel about the pending case of Travell Massey et al. In Lynchburg City School Board, because consultation in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the school board. Number 2, as permitted by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7, for consultation with legal counsel about the pending case of Tawana Hancock versus Lynchburg City Schools and Lynchburg City School Board, because consultation in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the school board. And number 3, as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7, for consultation with legal counsel about the pending case of John McLean versus Lynchburg City Schools and Lynchburg City School Board, because consultation in an open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the school board. The school board chair recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following as permitted by the Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel. Is there a motion?
Move to go into closed session.
Thank you, Dr. Knowles. Ms. Carter, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are now going to convene in closed session in room 206. Neither of us did. We do now. They forgot us. Out of closed meeting, I'd like a motion to reconvene in our public meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to reconvene our public meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Brennan. Ms. Carter, a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Certification of closed meeting. The board chair moves that the Lynchburg School Board certify that in closed meeting just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters specifically identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting, and two, lawfully permitted to be so discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. Is there a motion to certify?
Move to certify.
Thank you, Dr. Nillis. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Carter, thank you. We take vote by roll call. Ms. Evans?
Yes.
Dr. Brennan?
Yes.
Ms. Carter?
Yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Nillis?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Dr. Gupta? Okay. All right, that takes care of that. The next order of business is a special presentation in recognition of some of our guests in the audience, and we're very happy to see you all here tonight. Dr. Edwards?
Sure. So just a little small event that happened this week, but one that was lots of splash and we're extremely proud of. Paul Munro Elementary School, if you have not heard, is a national, all capital letters, national blue ribbon school, which is a huge accomplishment because only over 300 schools in the whole entire country, and we are one of them. So we are extremely proud of them being recognized by this honor, and this is all due to their hard work, the staff, the administration, the students, the family, and the community that pitches in over there, helping with the growth and development and closing achievement gaps and just having some outstanding and stellar performance at that school. But it's more than just the academic performance, because if that were the only thing, they probably wouldn't be a blue ribbon school. But there really is a sense of family, a sense of community, and a sense of we aren't giving up there at Paul Munro School. So we were at Paul Munro, when was that? Tuesday? When was it? Thursday. And much to a superintendent's shock, her principal was on the roof celebrating. And when she said, "I'm getting on the roof and celebrating," I thought, okay, yeah, great. She really meant she was getting on the roof and celebrating. And if you were not there, I think the best moment for me was all of the students. For those of you who were there, they were enjoying it. They were celebrating. They were proud. There was so much Paul Munro spirit there that, I mean, it was just oozing all over the place. So even though it was hot, but we were happy to be there and enjoy that time. But we also wanted to recognize you here. So we're going to invite Ms. Baer and everybody from Paul Munro to come up and tell us who you have with you.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. I did bring my wonderful, wonderful team. I've said this before, it takes a whole team to have a blue ribbon school. Hardworking students, teachers that are dedicated, parents that are involved, and a community that supports and embraces our students. Here with me tonight, I have Miss Elizabeth Wrinkle, Stephanie Guildmaker, Lee Tucker, Dana Owen, Melinda Litchford, Dear Callahan, Carrie Frankfurt, Rebecca Hunter, Carrie Doremus, Tish Lowry, and Elizabeth Cook.
recognition for you that we are going to bring up to you.
This is a certificate of recognition with appreciation for the extraordinary efforts and services you provide to the city of Lynchburg. We honor Paul Munro Elementary School 2019 National Blue Ribbon School.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys. Well-deserved honor. Can we shake hand there?
Thank you. We dropped the flower.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys look all rested now. All the kids out in the courtyard.
Could we get you to come up and stand in front of the board and let's get a picture?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You have the flower.
Okay.
You should probably be in front of
One, two, three, blue. All right, let me take a few more. Can you two scoot down?
Thank you. Two representatives from Paul Munro are invited to Washington, D.C. for the November recognition ceremony, where they will be presented with a National Blue Ribbon School plaque and flag, a symbol of the school's achievements. It's a big deal,
Yes, it is.
really big deal.
Congratulations again, ladies.
Okay, that now moves us to the public comment part of our meeting. In accordance with policy BDDH, public participation, the school board welcomes requests and comments as established in the guidelines within that policy. Individuals who wish to speak before the school board shall have an opportunity to do so at this time. And we have a full schedule tonight. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to his or her official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meetings or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, roles, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit his comments to 5 minutes. The representative shall identify the group at the beginning of his or her presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comments at school board meetings is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussions at this time. Ms. Chandler? Mr. Chandler, sorry. Excuse me. As many times as I've seen you, I should have known that, right?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Reason Chandler, and as you know, I am a father of an LCS student with a disability. In response to LCS's Don't Sleep On school campaign, I have some concerns that go beyond the PR campaign to promote school attendance. While I understand that attendance is important, I also understand that there are many reasons students don't always get to go or get to school. Unstable home environment, lack of food, sleep, clean clothes, unaddressed bullying. For some students with disabilities, regular physical attendance at school is an impossibility. The Don't Sleep On tagline trivializes the real need of our students and put further shame on students that are steadily struggling. Under the Every Student Success Act, schools are directed to address attendance issues in a non-punitive way. Yet, how many of our kids are referred to truancy without meaningful conversation and support tried first? How many of our kids with disabilities have appropriate attendance acknowledgement in the IEP, in their IEPs and or 504 plans? What community support is LCS partnering with to address the underlying issues that keep a child from attending school? Don't Sleep On got my attention, but not for the reason you had hoped. Students that struggle with attendance need real, personalized support to access their education. I encourage LCS not to sleep on and invest real, meaningful resources on this issue. Thank you.
I think it's Mr. Davis. I can't read I'm having trouble tonight.
There, looks like Richard Edward Davis.
Well, I was surprised, but anyway, I'd like to encourage all the students to stay in school. Be the best you can, go to college, learn a trade, because after a while they're going to have machines doing everything.
Thank you. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this.
Tyler, Milton, Jesse, Wynn.
A win.
And if I missed it, please correct me.
Hello. As it stands in the Lynchburg City Schools, LGBTQ students are at risk of being verbally discriminated against with no retribution from the school system. I'm here on behalf of Virginia Organizing to request for 2 groups of vulnerable children and teens to be protected under the non-discrimination policy for students in Lynchburg City Schools. The current protected identities include race, color, national origin, sex, disability, and age. We stand here today asking that you extend the protected identities to include sexual orientation and gender identity. Faggot, queer, pansy, flamer. These are all slurs that I heard throughout my childhood meant to demean and degrade anyone associated with the LGBTQ community. I was raised within a conservative Christian culture in a small town not unlike Lynchburg. The overall attitude towards queer folks ranged from ignorant to hostile, and LGBTQ issues were met with silence and disgust. I'm a gay man, and yet with such a damaging narrative surrounding the queer community, it was to my advantage to remain closeted throughout my childhood. This aligned the religious claim that my sexuality was something to be ashamed of. I was able to avoid being targeted for my gayness only because I stayed silent about it. But I know that some children aren't so lucky. For this reason, I stand here today. Regardless of your personal beliefs, no child should be the target of bullying or ridicule for their sexual orientation or their gender identity. A child should never have to fear being shamed or rejected for their identity, certainly not in an environment devoted to education, self-discovery, and growth. If you do not address this issue, you condone the perpetuation of a hostile narrative that continues to damage LGBTQ children. It is my desire for the Lynchburg students to be free from enduring the blatant discrimination and internalized homophobia that I endured when I was in school. Will you extend the protection to include vulnerable children and teens who experience discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in the Lynchburg City School System? Thank you.
Good evening. We can agree policy does not eliminate the experience of discrimination. However, policy recognizes the problem exists, urgency to address it, and sets the tone with clear next steps. By placing sexual orientation and gender identity in Lynchburg City Schools' non-discrimination policy, we directly address the silence and shame Tyler named in his experience. Shame, it's the feeling that something is inherently bad about you, something deficient, something needing to be changed. Tyler referenced his experience of silence and feelings of shame, silence from authorities, and shame dealt with by silence for safety reasons. However, Tyler has the courage now to imagine a different experience, maybe one where a young gay boy could feel safe to be in school without being bullied for his identity, or at least feel empowered to address it because the school knows it's a problem and takes active steps to address it with policy. When silence and shame exist, students can be bullied for their identity with no accountability. The hate speech that Tyler endured as a boy was perpetuated because it wasn't directly addressed with policy. Policy makes suffering matter. When suffering matters, communities get healthier. My name is Dr. Jesse Wynn. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've conducted over 210 full psychological evaluations in the city of Lynchburg and surrounding counties for over the past 2 years, 11% of which have been children with identities on the LGBTQ spectrum. If given the opportunity to talk about their experiences at school, bullying related to their sexual orientation or gender identity surfaces. They reference feeling both ashamed for who they are and unprotected. Here are some statewide data to think about. On August 14th, 2019, Side by Side of Virginia offered safer space training right here in Lynchburg about a month and a half ago. Maybe some of you all attended. Some of the highlights: 33% of lesbian, gay, or bisexual youth report being bullied versus 17% of their heterosexual peers. The odds of substance use for lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth were on average 190% higher than heterosexual youth. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are 3 to 5 times more likely to to attempt suicide than their heterosexual peers. LGBTQ plus people experience high levels of mental health distress because of how society treats them, not because they are LGBTQ plus. We cannot be quiet about these data anymore. Non-discrimination policy is about our children's safety, their health and well-being, and will impact the adults our children become. Let's work together as a community to protect our children by including sexual orientation and gender identity in Lynchburg City Schools' non-discrimination policy. Thank you for your time.
Dan Harrison.
Hello, my name's Dan Harrison. I'm the pastor at Church of the Covenant. Thank you, distinguished members, superintendent, and others for letting me speak. I'm also the father of a recent graduate from EC Glass High School. I come as one of those who used to, unfortunately, speak negatively of people of a different sexual orientation. And by God's grace, that's changed in my life. And I realize as a spiritual leader in a community, we have a lot of weight. As educators, you, of course, have a lot of weight, and especially when it comes to our young. And we must have an ethic of care. And if that ethic of care extends beyond not only the beliefs, maybe the faith or lack of, but also the sexual orientation or identity or gender identity of those young people, we must affirm in every way possible. And my experience has been here in Lynchburg that students who do identify differently have often felt most at odds and perhaps even persecuted by their teachers themselves. And I ask that we definitely adopt something very, very specific to protect all of those who feel like they are perhaps being targeted, because they shouldn't be. It's all about educating our children. It's a very simple thing. We should love everyone and always look out for the welfare of our children, regardless of how they identify themselves, and they should know that we love them just the way they are. Thank you.
We next have Joe Marasini.
Hi, thank you. First, I want to thank you all for your volunteer service to our school community. My name is Joe Marasini. I'm a Lynchburg City resident. I have 4 children that have attended every year K through 12 in the Lynchburg City school systems. Their ages are 14 to 22. I currently have 2 students at EC Glass High School. One's a freshman and one's a senior. All 4 of my students or children played 3 varsity sports at EC Glass. So I have a little experience of what I'm going to talk about. I'm also the Booster Club Athletic Booster President at EC Glass High School currently. Field practice space at EC Glass is a vital need for our school community, and I hope you all will consider additional field space at EC Glass in your upcoming CIP. Currently, Glass has 1 field on campus for 13 field sports. That's not counting baseball or softball, and I'm not counting baseball and softball in any of my numbers. In comparison, Heritage, Amherst, and Brookville have 8 teams with more than 1 field on campus. Spring is especially difficult at EC Glass due to the fact that we have 10 field teams and 1 field on campus. In comparison, Heritage, Amherst, and Brookville have 6 spring teams with multiple full fields on campus. Those spring numbers do include track, but it's hard to practice track when there's balls flying around, especially lacrosse balls. All 4 of my kids play lacrosse, and they all play lacrosse at Glass. I've lived through the girls being shuffled to Kaiser Elementary on a half field that's bumpy, and I've also lived through the boys getting shuffled to Blackwater Creek Park to have practice. Neither of those situations is ideal, but they were grateful to have a place to practice their sport. This boils down to 5 issues with regards to the 3 additional field spaces that EC Glass manages in the spring: space, cost, transportation, safety, and athletic training. I've already covered the space issue. Cost, we have additional transportation costs to get the kids to and from practice. We also have to pay substitute athletic trainers to go to those fields. We also have additional equipment costs due to the fact that we cannot haul the equipment back and forth to those practice facilities, and we have to purchase 3 additional AED devices to cover those fields. Transportation and safety, I'm going to lump those 2 together. We're not always able to schedule buses to get the kids to practice, and sometimes we schedule buses, they just don't show up. Basically what that means is you have multiple kids jumping into other older children's cars driving off-site to have practice. Athletic training is self-explanatory. We have 1 full-time athletic trainer covering 4 different locations in the spring. So in conclusion, any consideration that you would give to providing additional field space at EC Glass in your upcoming CIP on campus would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Abrams?
Yeah, Ahrens. Let's start with David Ahrens.
It's David, but I'm not able to read the last name. Sorry. Could you say your last name for me?
I can. Thank you for letting me be here. It's David Ahrens. And Joe handled quite a bit of what I was going to talk about with all the details. My family and I moved to Lynchburg 5 years ago from Bedford County, and I wanted to talk about the field space. And while Joe hit a lot of the spring sports, I'm dealing with 6 kids. The first 3 have graduated from Glass. All 3 were lacrosse players. I've got a cross-country runner that plays tennis, so he's not a field space guy. And my oldest daughter is a freshman this year, and in the fall, they're dealing with the problem with field space. So I'm seeing they're having to shuffle the field hockey team over to City Stadium. And like Joe said, there's not always buses, and I'm seeing kids jumping into cars. In addition, to get field space, they're changing practices till 6 to 8 or 7 to 9 at night because of lack of field space. Fortunately, my wife this year is her first year as coaching. She's trying to stay ahead of it, and there's many a times where she believes she has a field reserved and shows up and there's another team there, or the band is there because they need to practice there as well. The field space is much needed, and it keeps the kids active. And with 6 kids, I know activity helps keep them settled down. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you'll really consider this additional field space. Thank you.
Jason Landis?
Good evening. My name is Jason Landis. Thank you for your time and allowing me to come up and talk to you guys this evening. I have 3 children in the city schools, one in high school, a freshman, and she plays sports, lacrosse at this point. And as a parent of a new high school athlete, the field space is a concern for me as well. The scheduling, for the most part, is where I'm concerned because everybody's fighting for the same space because it's limited. And so the scheduling, whether it's late at night or whether it's on the weekends, really is just not conducive, in my opinion, for a high school student, especially when you take in academics and the time it takes for them to be well-rounded, not just in athletics, but in their academics. So I just wanted to echo some of the statements that have already been made, and thank you for your time and consideration, for that issue at EC Glass.
That concludes the public comment section. Now we move on to the finance report.
Hi, good evening. I'm going to be presenting the finance report for the month of August. The revenues received through August 31st is $6,590,325.14. The expenditures through that same time period is $11,079,134.68. And our actual encumbered, which is going to be your open POs and all of the contracted salaries that have been encumbered along with their benefits, is $70,755,185.82. The percentage of the budget received is 6.67%. Percentage of the budget used, excluding those encumbrances, is 11.22%. And I just wanted to point out, because usually when you see revenue less than your expenditures, that's not a good thing. But I just wanted to point out with your state funding, it's based on your funding source. So your SOQ funded, you receive at the beginning and you get it throughout the school year. Some of the items that are lottery funded, you will not start even receiving that revenue until 2020 in January. So what makes up that difference is the city appropriation, and they will fund as needed. And you have to take into account like prior year carryover fund balance. They will fund what is needed. So I did just want to point that out because it was a big difference. I have updated the health insurance payment section to include what our administrative fees were for the month and the medical and pharmacy claims. And then I have the insurance payable balance at August 31st, and that balance is $421,532.08. And if you recall, that's about $100,000 less than what we had reported to you last month. I did want to point out, though, that the new employees coming on, their benefits will not start having their deductions from payroll and the employer contribution until September. So for example, if you have an employee that takes single health insurance, every pay period, like every month, they will contribute $30.80 to the health insurance reserve. On the employer side, the school system will contribute for that single coverage $434.12 a month. So you're not seeing those contributions you will see those for the people that have come on and have taken their deductions. You'll see those in September. But we are continuing to monitor it. The claims, at this point, we're not concerned. Also attached, you'll have the revenue detail and the expenditure detail. And if you have any questions, I'll try to assist.
Any questions?
Mr. Gott, thank you very much for that nice report. Just one question. What's the timing of seeing the financial statement for the previous year for 18-19?
We are finishing that up as they wrap up the audit. I would expect that would be, in my mind, we are finished, but until it's official, it would be towards the end of October.
Maybe at the next finance committee agenda.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one. With the medical and pharmacy claims, is that up, or is that where we expect it to be?
That is actually in line. It was up a little bit more than
Okay.
the previous year, but we did have one employee that has hit stop loss. So we are just a little forecast for September starting to see those go back down.
Okay.
But it's nothing that is alarming at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, Kim, I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly when you were talking about contributions. So some of our new employees have not started the deductions, or we haven't seen the deductions?
That is correct. They have their first pay in August,
Okay.
but they still have to elect their benefits, and that will take effect on their September 15th payroll. So you'll see that contribution go into that balance.
And then the figure that you quoted, I think was somewhere around $30. Is that for single? That's what a single employee would contribute out of their pay for coverage?
Correct. So it's around $15.40 a pay period because we get paid semi-monthly, but the monthly contribution for a single, and I'm using that because around 64.5% of our employees have the single plan. And then the employer, so the school system provides the $434.12 towards the health insurance costs, and the employee pays the $30.80.
That's quite a benefit.
Yeah.
We'll be coming as part of the finance committee.
Any other questions? We'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the school board minutes, September 3rd, 2019 regular meeting, the work session minutes, August 20th, 2019, the student discipline committee meeting, September 5th, 2019, the amended personnel report, and the religious exemption notice that we received.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Is Ms. Carter? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we come to the fun part of the night. We get to hear from our new school board reps. Welcome, gentlemen. We're happy to have you. Who would like to go first? Chris.
All right.
From Easy Glass.
Yes, ma'am. All right. So, as you guys know, I'm Christopher Murata. I'm now a senior at EC Glass. There's my email. If any of you guys want to contact me, feel more than free. I like seeing emails, so that's always a good thing. So anyway, tonight I'm going to be talking about a few things. Those are all up there. I tried to divide it into sections, but there's a little bit of overlap just because there's so much stuff going on. Anyway, welcome back. Obviously, we've started the new school year. It's been a pretty exciting one. On the next slide, we have every year Glass does a little thing where they basically, all the teachers write how many years they've been there, and they take a picture with them. I always enjoy seeing those pictures. So yeah, and actually it's kind of funny that a lot of those teachers have actually been teaching that school longer than I've been alive. So I think it's always nice to see the amount of experience that everybody has there. Then there's a lot of sports stuff going on. Obviously, you guys heard from the public comments. There's a lot of people that play in sports. Two of the sports that we just kind of are finishing up on now is golf and cross country. The picture of the golf, I believe, is after placing third in districts, I think. Yep. And then the cross country picture, that was actually from senior night. So those are some of our senior runners with cross country. And we are currently varsity field hockey and volleyball is going on right now. We're 3-3 with field hockey, so it's actually the field hockey team. Oh, awesome! The field hockey team's starting to get a lot better. I remember, I think that when I was a freshman year, they kind of first started it, and now we're starting to see them do a lot better in games, so that's really cool to see. And our varsity volleyball is 5-4, so they're doing well also. And then, oh wait, I think I skipped. Yes, I did. So football, that's a pretty big part of this time of year. You know, a lot of people are coming out to our games, and that's always really cool. Also, I tried to put a lot of these pictures I got from Twitter. I'm really thankful we have two awesome people. The EC Glass Athletics Twitter is, you know, always has stuff going to keep us updated. Also, Ms. Floor runs the EC Glass High School Twitter, and she does a really amazing job doing that, just kind of keeping us all informed, and it's really cool to see the pictures on the events that I don't have time to go and see. But those are some of the events that have been going on recently. Also, you'll notice that we're 4-0 with football, so we're doing pretty well this year. There are some pretty big games there. The benefit game did not go too well, but that isn't part of the actual season, so we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, football team's been doing really good. I have one of my best friends is actually a football player, and so they work really hard. He has a lot of late practices, so it's definitely well deserved. And so we also had homecoming recently, and actually I think Dr. Edwards was there as well, because I found on her Twitter she actually got a really good picture of the king and queen for homecoming, which is Jaden Merriman and Amaya Brown. So that was really cool to see them there. And I know there's a lot going on because we also had the band, I believe, sharing time with homecoming too, so you got to see their performance. And we had Spirit Week as well, September 18th or 16th, to the 20th. Those are some pictures of the various students participating in Spirit Week. Yeah. I believe, all right, just making sure I didn't skip anything. Our town is opening tomorrow, so that's a really big one. If you have the opportunity to see it, I really recommend it. It's going to be in the Alumni Studio Theater, which if you haven't been to that facility, it's smaller, but it's really cool because you kind of get to be up close and personal with all the actors, and you get to see all the expressions and stuff. So it's a really nice thing. I have friends also that are on working on that show, and they're working really hard to get that ready for tomorrow. And so tickets are $12 for adults, $8 for students and seniors. And also the next slide is a video. I'm sorry, I hope that we get it to work this time. Oh no. Oh, all right, that was actually my fault. So I uploaded the video this morning. I forgot to make it public, but if you guys want to, I can share that with all of you. Basically, it's a really cool video. It was a student, Bobby Vinson, actually created like a meet the cast for our town, and it was all the cast members. They all said a little bit about themselves, and he added some extra editing in there. So it's really cool to kind of see that crossover, you know, see the different clubs kind of overlap there. So I'll make sure that you guys get that video, and that was my fault. I apologize for that. Also, we have marching band. I mentioned them earlier. They're working super hard. This year, our drum major is Aaron McCarthy, and their show is called Underworld. And actually, just recently, they went to Glenvar High School and got 4A champions and 4A through 6A grand champions. So that's a pretty big deal. So it's cool to see them doing good. I'd have friends in there too that, you know, they work super hard. There's a lot of people that are working really hard to put on all this stuff for us. So that's always really nice. There we go. Okay, so earlier this year, actually in September, they had the Lynchburg Art Festival, which is usually held at Glass. I believe that our art teacher actually does a lot of work with that and making sure that gets put on. And so it's a really cool opportunity for the students, along with, I believe, other people in the Lynchburg community to kind of show off their artwork in a really cool fashion. So there's that there as well. The Virginia 10 miler, unfortunately, I did not run in that. I'm not really in peak physical fitness right now. But so that was September 28th. A lot of EC Glass students were there. We had, I believe, the JROTC was helping. We had some other students that I think were part of sororities that were helping there as well. So there were a lot of people helping out. And there were a lot of people running too. I tried to get some of the pictures from the Glass students that ran in it, and there were even more than that. I know some of my friends that were football players ran in it, so there were a lot of Glass people representing there, and that was really cool to see. Also, I'm sure you guys have heard Mark Warner actually came to visit Glass, which was really cool. That's a pretty big deal to have your senator come and visit your school. But what's even more cool is he got to actually talk to the students and, actually I mentioned there discuss the cost of higher education. Glass has really been taking that hard, which is really cool to see, giving people the opportunities to pursue higher education if they want that. Which as a student is really awesome because, it kind of helps you through with all of the scholarships and stuff, which I'm doing right now, and it's super confusing. So having people there to help you with that, scholarships, college apps is really awesome. And knowing that people, like our senator actually care about that is really encouraging too. So what's new? The student leadership team, actually, I believe this was an idea by Dr. Garrett, and it's something really cool. Basically, it's representatives from each of the student leadership clubs in Glass, so clubs like NHS, SCA, the Ambassadors, JROTC, and Key Club, I believe, are the ones that are represented there, all met, and we met, I believe, last Thursday. And we discussed a few issues. Some of them were how to increase school spirit and various things like that, along with, I think we were also discussing the possibility of looking at a homeroom in the future, just general stuff like that, that we're interested in pursuing to kind of start discussions with that and open that up. So it's to identify problems really and to find solutions, and it was really cool to be a part of that discussion. And then also last year is my last slide, I believe. I mentioned that we had a new cell phone policy. It was really, I put new in parentheses because it's always been the cell phone policy. It's just being enforced this year, or more tightly enforced and universally. So basically, they're simplifying it to, if you're in an instructional zone, you can't have your phone. So that is places like the library, classrooms, and stuff like that. During transitions, I mentioned it's a little bit finicky. Some people are unfortunately using their phone while they're walking, and that doesn't always end up being the best thing, especially when they're not paying attention. But I mean, other than that, as much as I don't like the ability to pull out my phone whenever I want to, it seems to be working really well, and I think it's helping a lot of people, stay on track and get the stuff done we needed. However, one thing I did notice, I'm not sure if you guys heard, but Glass did go on a soft lockdown today, and one of the things I heard as a result of that is whether students are allowed to actually use their phones during a lockdown, because obviously you're still in an instructional zone, and especially a real lockdown. I think that there's definitely some concern about that, and that'll probably be something that gets brought up in the next leadership meeting, because something that I think, especially in that position, a lot of students feel that they would like to be able to contact their parents or see what's going on. So, I believe that is it. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Harlan from Heritage High School.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ian Garland. I will be one of the student representatives for the 2019-2020 school year. So let's start talking about Heritage. So back in June, the art students had an event at the Academy Center of the Arts, and they displayed a lot of their artwork, and a lot of people from the public got to see some of the amazing artistic abilities of some of the students from Heritage. Congratulations to Caleb Mink for getting the chance to go to Anaheim, California to compete in the National Leadership Conference. He got that ability he competed in the Virginia Leadership Conference, and he placed first, so they invited him to go to Anaheim. Taylor Morgan, she also went to California this summer. She went out to San Francisco, and she was the Heritage High School representative for the Youth Leadership Summit for the Gear Up Conference. Congratulations to Alasia Oakes. She received the title for the All-Area Girls Outdoor Track and Field Athlete of the Year. The football team went out and volunteered at the Habitat for Humanity this summer. They went out and they helped pave sidewalks and driveways for members of the community. On August the 7th, the freshmen were welcomed to number 1 Big Orange Country with the freshman orientation. The new teachers were welcomed into the building this year, and there are a lot of new teachers this year. And they got a warm welcoming from the students during the pep rally that was on the first day of school. And the teachers went out on the basketball court and they would state their name and what they were going to teach for the year, and then everyone would start clapping and they would congratulate them. The cross-country team has done really well this year. They started off by winning their first meet against Rustburg High School, and then Grace Stager and Luke Richards also won their individual races. The volleyball team has also had a great start this school year. They won their game against Stanton River, which was an amazing accomplishment. I'm a member of the Pioneer Pollinator Project, and we brought an observation hive to all 3 lunches during the school day. And what we did is we set up the hive, and we told everyone to come and look at the bees and ask any questions they had about bees. And we just tried to inform people about what the bees do for the ecosystem, and to also try to get people involved with our club. The girls' outdoor field and track team, they got their state rings as soon as we got back to school. The theater, they have a showing of The Boys Next Door this Friday, and there will also be a fundraiser for the Heritage Pioneer Wrestling team, and they're going to be selling barbecue and wings, trying to raise money for their team so they can buy equipment. The Big Orange Marching Machine, they got second place in the marching and guard competition on Saturday. They also got first place in the music category and first place overall in the Class AA competition. The football team has had they had a rocky start against Vance. Vance was a pretty good team, and we did lose, but ever since then we've really been beating everyone else. We really beat Appomattox and Marshall and Liberty and Amherst. Those were some really good games, and the team is starting to look like they're on the uptick to hopefully another state championship. And the student sections this year, they've been extremely prideful. There's been a lot of school support and school spirit as we go out and support the football team. Thank you for your time.
Our school board meetings are so much better when you're here. I just want you to know that. But I have a couple challenges for you all to take back to your schools. Governor Northam has issued a high school voter registration challenge through which high schools across the state will compete to register the highest percentage of their voting age population. So the goal is 65% of your voting population should be registered. So, challenge. The second one is that this month is School Board Association Bullying Prevention Month. That's the reason for the orange ribbons, because that's what the color is for anti-bullying. So our charge to you all is to make sure that good things happen in your school to help identify the problems and come up with solutions. And we'll be interested in hearing what you're doing in the schools and how you're attacking this problem. Any other comments to our school board reps? Thank you. You both did a great job. Thank you very much. Okay, next. School board committee reports. Okay. Finance committee.
The more coming that way.
Thank you.
You can give it to him. I made like 17 copies. All right, so you got the agenda there, and I'm going to key takeaways, and correct, Dr. Brennan was there, and Chair Morrison, and Dr. Nillis was there. We talked about buying more seats on Governor School, and that one seat costs us about $4,700. Right now we have 42 seats. Dr. Edwards, am I right? Right, and there are 12 spots open. It means we need to buy 6 for juniors and 6 for high schools. So we left it there because of we don't know where the money will get it for to buy those 12 spots. So 12 times 5 is almost $60,000 plus minus few. Then we talked about we combined middle school and high school buses and how much did we save from there. So we were informed we basically saved 7 full-time driver positions were saved as of that merger. And Dr. Edwards, if my numbers don't match up, just correct me. And then we basically.
But can I just interject?
Sure.
Because this is live. So yes, we saved 7 full-time positions, but that doesn't mean we laid anybody off.
Yeah, nobody
other
was laid
positions.
off.
We were struggling to
still
fill the bus driver positions.
Yes, you're 100% correct. We talked about city reserve. Right now we have about $2.66 million in reserve. We're required to have $2.5 million. Yeah, right? That's 2.6675925 was the number, or? Yeah.
Yeah.
How much lower the?
2.2?
I'll get you the exact.
And we talked about, you have all these attachments. You will see, which Ms. Kim has presented in terms of health reserve, where do we spend, where do we stand as of August? And your numbers today will be more current than this one, right?
What was reported today was August.
August, so
this
it's
is the
same numbers.
This is a little more detailed.
A lot more detail. You can
Correct.
see that in terms of payroll contributions from employee and employer. There's a breakup there which gives you more detail. School nutrition payments, VRS, it goes into, and as of the end of the day, the balance is $421,000. And then the next page, as I was telling Chair Morrison, the contribution of employees. So I'd like to bring your attention to the top column, 24 page, 12 months. We have grandfathered in several employees. I think you mentioned 20 of them. Am I correct in 20 employees are grandfathered in where both family and spouse are employed?
Correct.
And they pay 0 premium for health insurance. That's a very good benefit LCS provides. You see that in dark? There's 0 contribution for the premium. So that's a wonderful benefit Lynchburg City Schools is providing to our employees. Then we went into, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. We went into talking about, we did living wages last time, and it caused some compression. Should we decompress it, or should we leave it as it is? So I have attached all these tables. If you have any questions, you can ask me, but end of the day, the decision was to leave it as it is right now, because the revenues, money is not clear. How much do we have left over, and how much money will be needed. So all the details of these different tables are there. Am I taking too long? And that's all about, it breaks up data into, we talked about, there was a question from one of the board members about we have difficulty hiring bus drivers, on the go, and how much do we pay? Could we increase their wages per hourly? And that's why this last but one page is there. And custodian wages we looked at, basically it's all in light of living wages. And all this discussion is to see if we can help people who are feeling the salary compression in their ranks because of they have more experience, to see what we can do to decompress that compression. And that discussion is ongoing. And we also talked about the gymnasium at Heritage Elementary School. And that's where I'll leave it. That discussion will be continuing.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Governor's School.
Okay. The Governor's School met on Wednesday, September the 4th at Heritage High School, at the Governor's School at Heritage High School. Two of the key items that we discussed, tuition and enrollment report. Currently, the Governor's School serves 137 students. We have a capacity of 150, and I think that goes to the comment that Dr. Gupta was mentioning, that there are spaces available that we, as the Lynchburg City Schools, could possibly take advantage of. Currently, we do have 42 students who attend there. Again, if the superintendent and the school board wish to increase that number, there is available slots. The other key item from our meeting was that our meeting schedule is being revised. In the coming year, we will meet the months of August, October, December, February, March, April, and May, specifically that timeline, because that's when we address a lot of our budget issues and so forth. But our next governor's school meeting will be on November the 6th at 1 p.m.
Thank you. Legislative advocacy, Dr. Brennan?
STEM Academy did not meet since our last
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
meeting.
That's right. All right. Advisory committees to the school board.
I'm sorry. Legislative advocacy, sorry, comment that we did meet.
We did.
I'm sorry. The STEM Academy did not,
STEM
but the
did.
Legislative Advocacy Committee did meet on September 5th. From the community relations part, we had a nice discussion with the Department of Communications about what they do to publicize and to promote Lynchburg City Schools, which I think was very informative and helpful. We talked about the concept of Adopt Our School, which we mentioned briefly at our work session, which is seeing if we can line up different board members with different schools, and we're on our way to do that. It was a little bit more complicated than I originally thought as far as matching schools to people. But I have sort of a draft that, with Ms. Morrison's permission, I'm going to email to people just to look at and see if it works. I try to take people's first, second, third choices and shuffle around, but it's open for discussion. I'll send that out. And we're going to discuss it at our retreat as far as the roles and finalize that. And then really the majority of me was talking about our legislative agenda, which is what we're really trying to work on. We have a goal of trying to have that to the board for approval in November, in our November meeting. So we went over our first sort of draft of the different items. It was recommended that we review those with Nora Dunn, who was previously our legal advisor, that we discuss it with Jason Kessler, JT Kessler, who's with VSBA as their government advocacy person, and also with Reed Rodica as deputy manager for the city to sort of get their input. And those conversations have been had. We had a conversation with Nora Dunn. Dr. Nelson and I had one with JT Kessler. And then I recently had email exchange with Reed Rodica. Again, with Ms. Morrison's permission, I'd like to send you all by email sort of the first draft of these items for you to look at. And then at our retreat on the 11th, JT Kessler is going to come and give sort of an overview about legislative advocacy that he gave at a recent meeting in Richmond that was very helpful, and also specifically comment about what items we're discussing. But prior to that, we'd like to get that to you. So I will mail that either today or tomorrow for your review. And again, as a draft, it's open for discussion. But I think we're on the road to trying to have something available, and we've had a lot of good support from various people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Advisory committee to the school board.
Sure. I did have the 2 dates, the upcoming 2 dates for the CTE advisory committee, so I'll have to get those to you.
Okay.
October 22nd.
Thank you. October 22nd?
At 12.
At 12, thank you. It's like I knew it got me. The only group that met was the Special Ed Advisory Committee, and I believe that they will be speaking to us about Disability Awareness Month, either now or not now. You want some time now? Mr. Van Werker can come on up and give us a quick overview.
This will not take long, but your advisory committee had a really busy meeting in late September, and they wanted me to deliver a message to you, this follow-up. So if I may, I just have a few sentences to read for you. So October is Disability History and Awareness Month, and as we continue to recognize the unique needs of students with disabilities, Lynchburg City Schools Special Education Advisory Committee is hosting an information session to assist parents, local service professionals, and LCS faculty and staff members of students with disabilities. The event will be hosted at Heritage High School from 6 to 8 on October 22nd. And during the opening session, which will be titled Understanding Students with Mental Health Needs, Strategies and Supports for Educators and Families, More than 17 million children in the United States have or have had a diagnosed mental illness. Many more have experienced trauma in their lives that affect learning, relationships, and mental health. These children come to school and into our classrooms every day. Often they have challenging behaviors that create difficulties within the classroom. And the advisory committee is excited to sponsor this session, which will focus on helping teachers and other professionals empathize with these students, understand the needs, supports, and identify strategies that are helpful. So y'all are welcome to come, and Ms. Babb helped us with the announcement, and she's going to be helping to get that out next week, or this week. October 22nd at Heritage High School. And the notice will just say to please call the special education office to register, just so that we can anticipate. So thank you very much.
Okay. Any more?
Nope.
Okay. Now we're moving to the strategic plan discussion. Dr. Edwards?
Yes. So, in your agenda on, I think, page 15, it says draft working document as of 9/20. That was the time that we actually printed it. There have been some updates since then, but what I wanted to share with the board was the draft of one of the 4 goals, along with the rationale, the equity habits, focus areas, objectives, and strategies, so you would see what this looks like once we put it all together. And again, it's labeled working draft because we're still working through some of it, but I want to kind of take you through this, answer any questions you may have, and then just know when we get to our board retreat, you'll have goals 3, 2, and 1. We're kind of working backwards. So the first thing you notice at the top is the board goal that you all adopted for goal 4 for our family and community engagement. And then what we did was put a rationale behind why that goal is important to us here in Lynchburg City Schools. And we recognize that it takes more than just us. We need to engage the community if we're going to be successful in helping our children not only succeed academically, but social emotionally and beyond our walls, so that they are productive, self-sustaining citizens. So we did put that down there as a rationale because it's very important to us. And many of you know that Ethel Reeves is the Director of Equity, Engagement, and Opportunity. And since I've been here, we've really pushed that equity is not a separate office, not a separate thing, and not a handoff. That equity should be a part of everything we do. So each of our goals, you'll see an equity habit as opposed to an equity awareness or a statement. And we purposely chose the word habit because habit is something that you do and you practice, and sometimes you just do it without thinking. So if we have good equity habits in play, we don't have to think about them. They become the fabric of what we do. And we put down there under our community engagement goal what our equity habit that goes along with this goal should be, and it really is to be inclusive of all persons, not just our staff and our students, but also our parents, our families, our neighborhoods, and our communities in the city. Then the next part of it is outlined into a couple of different focus areas, which this does not represent everything we do, but really some of the major things that we're working on. We've started working a little bit last year, but more this year and going forward. And you can see the first being a family and community engagement concept map, which Ms. Reeves and her team is working on, all the way to how we engage families and caregivers. And we recognize families and caregivers as opposed to just parents, period, because nowadays, while we do have a lot of families that have what we would call the traditional parents, we have a lot of our kids that are being raised by grandparents, foster parents, aunts, uncles, good friends, and just people who care. So families and caregivers, we want to make sure that we include them as well. And you can see businesses, community engagement, and then a marketing plan as the 5th focus area. The objectives are listed under each section. The numbering system is pretty straightforward. If it's goal 4, focus area 4.2, we just tried to keep the numbering consistent. What I would like to do in this section of the board meeting going forward is give you updates and say, we're going to talk about 422. And I can pull that objective out and give you an update of where we are with some of those strategies. I listed the strategies, and then one thing that you will see in our plan in bold is a reference to the Lynchburg plan and the Economic Development and Tourism Blueprint for Opportunity. Part of that needs to be updated because when we were working on this, we had an older version of the Lynchburg plan. I have a new version of the Lynchburg plan, and the numbering system is off. But the Lynchburg plan is City Council's priorities for the next couple years, and we aligned our goals and looked through City Council goals and said, where do they support us? And we call that out in our strategic plan. The same thing with the Economic Development and Tourism. I had an opportunity to attend their first year session, and part of what we do is participate in their anchor institutions, which is their goal 2. But more importantly, they're talking about talent development as goal 3, and that's what we do. The talent starts with us in pre-K, right? Pre-K, and then graduate and go on to other institutions or in the workforce. So you will see in here references to that so that you know which goals, which strategies and objectives are aligned with that. We put lead persons responsible, and that by no means that is the only person responsible, just if we need a spokesperson for that activity, it's there. We tried to put some timelines. Those are pretty flexible in terms of some of the work we're doing. And then, of course, anticipated outcomes. And in writing this, I really tried to write it for just the common person who's out there reading it. We didn't put a lot of what folks may call edubabble in here. There are some acronyms which I will take out once we get it nice and cleaned up. But I wanted anybody to be able to read this and look at it and say, oh, one of the outcomes is that, they want a 10% reduction in student absenteeism as a particular outcome, something that we can measure and report out on, and then that is meaningful to us. So I didn't want to go through one by one, but I figured I'd leave a little time if you had any questions specifically. And Dr. Gupta.
I'd like the format, and I think that going forward, a good use of time to review in the manner that you stated.
Dr. Gupta?
Chair Morrison and I were in a committee meeting where we talked about 4.3 today, involving businesses. What I'd like to see is, you said increased in number of students receiving industry certifications. Could we put a number there too? I don't know how many are getting right now, and what is our anticipated goal? What are we heading for? Is it 10% increase from 400 to 500? And in business partnerships, are we relying solely on business alliance or bigger corporate partners like we talked about today in the afternoon, like big corporations in town? How to get them on the table and be a partner with us?
Yeah. In our new board member orientation, we talked about some partnerships in addition to Business Alliance, but also some of our other larger partners, whether or not they're partnering for curriculum reasons, whether or not they're partnering for talent, pipeline reasons. But the one thing that I do want to stress, particularly as we're talking about our family and community engagement, is that we are, Lynchburg City Schools, open to all partnerships. So there could be a particular area, let's just say mentoring or even talent development. We are not limited to talent development. We only work with this partner or we only work with that partner. We select multiple partners because we have kids that have various needs. So the answer to your question is yes, and we're looking to do that.
The point I'm heading for is a lot of corporations do business in city of Lynchburg. They may not be Lynchburg based. So they may not be parts of Lynchburg Alliance, but they have interest in the city. And they have interest in the workforce talent in this city. So I'm hoping we are trying to expand our horizons and reach out to those companies.
Absolutely. The thing that's not in here is there's some baseline data where we had baseline data, but baseline data is important. So when you talk about the number of students receiving industry certification, I actually have all those numbers, and it might differ depending on the area and the target. And you'll probably see more of that when we get to the goal 1, which is student growth and development.
comment. I think this is a phenomenal document. I'm sure that you and your staff put a ton of time into this. I think it's so well laid out. It's so clear. Thank you so much for doing all that. And I particularly like this 4.4 community engagement section. It hits on so many important things, including mentoring and tutoring programs, I think are great. One suggestion maybe in that area is to consider about PTO participation as far as trying to get the community more involved in our schools. Some people talk about the PTO as being the step into school board leadership in other areas in the schools, but if we could consider that. And on the last page, 4.5 marketing plan, I'm really thrilled with this last one, the 4.5.2, convene a small committee to review the current exit survey reviews for families and for teachers. I think that's something we've talked about a lot and hasn't, but that's great. And then last thing, and this is probably caught on your current new issue, which we don't have, is that the last, on the right-hand side of that section, where we want to decrease the number of staff members leaving this division due to job satisfaction should maybe be dissatisfaction.
Yeah. No one leaves because they're satisfied. There we go.
Right at the end. But thank you so much. It's a phenomenal amount of work and great document.
Any other comments? Questions? Thank you, and we'll look forward to seeing the rest of it. Yep. Unfinished business. The first deals with Lynchburg City School Board Governance Policy Review. If you remember, this came to us and then it went back and then it came back, and we felt like we were going to discuss it at the board, and that's what we're going to do tonight, to get input, and then we'll have a recommendation after we finish our discussion. This deals with public participation at school board meetings. Dr. Gupta.
What is the recommendation of the committee now? Is that the document we have attached, or is that the document which came from the superintendent? There were two attachments from the superintendent for discussion.
So let me just clarify what you received, especially for the public who did not receive that. It might have been 2 meetings ago, you received a modified version of this policy, which the policy committee, review committee brought for discussion, would have been first reading. And then there was some discussion during the meeting. The policy committee went back and they said, okay, we're not going to do that. We'll bring back the original policy. So what I sent you, because we knew we were going to have a fruitful discussion tonight, was I just wanted to remind you what was first presented a couple meetings ago, and then what the original policy, which is what's here right now, looks like, and that might help you have a discussion. And the reason why I did that is because I became aware that some board members were interested in parts of what was first presented, and we did not have an opportunity to discuss that one, so I wanted to make sure everybody had a copy of that prior to this meeting.
So the policy that we are looking at tonight is the one that the work group brought back to us after we sent it back to them.
That's the page 21 of our
Yes. Page 21 of our agenda. All right, the floor is open for discussion, comments.
I'd like to thank the committee for reconsidering. I know. But thank you very much, and I appreciate.
I'm sorry, page 24 is supposed to be different. Right, it was the same.
It's the same as page 21.
Right, but I thought we were going to look at the others.
Same policy.
Yeah. Same version.
The version that you have, I sent that to you in an email. It's not up for approval. Okay.
All right, the floor is open for discussion.
So we're just asking if we have anything we'd like to change?
Yes.
I do not.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Dr. Gupta? Mr. Harvey, do you have any comments?
I'm looking on page 21, correct? This is the policy that we are not 24, which is the exact same policy. I guess my question is, it still seems to me that this policy does not address what we were concerned with individuals speaking multiple times repetitively about the same subject. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so we are suggesting as a board that we not include that language in there? That's what I'm...
That's what's coming to us. That's what came to us tonight, yes.
Okay. I feel like that we do need to take into account members of our community who sometimes feel like they do not have the opportunity to speak simply because there is a group that will come and speak as a block. I have suggested that there be some language presented in this policy that would, if an individual maybe has spoken before regarding the same subject, that they might be moved down in the queue to allow other members who are new to giving their points of view at a meeting. They would then take a priority in the roster of those to speak. And that way I feel like we provide more opportunities for many of our people in the community to speak. If there's enough time within the 30 minutes, if that group would like to speak, that has spoken before, and there's still time available, they would be allowed to speak. But the priority should be given to new speakers.
Okay. So you are suggesting that we add language that says new speakers or individuals who've not spoken to the school board go first.
Yeah. If we have decided that we're going to allow speakers to speak multiple times on the same subject that has come before the school board, I think that we should give priority to new speakers. If a subject has been presented previously and is going to be presented yet again, priority should be given to new speakers.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Dr. Coleman?
Madam Chair, that's the first that I'm hearing. School Board Member Harvey put that on the table. It sounds logical to me. Again, I want to reiterate as a member of the working group. We are a working group and not a committee. We're working a group. I want to remind us that there was a time where we had absolutely no one coming for public comments. And this board was torn as to how to handle that. And we were very intentional about doing what we needed to do to get people to start coming. And now that they're coming, that's a good thing. And it's a variety of issues. So I am not in favor of limiting repeat persons from coming. But I do tend to embrace the queuing piece for persons who have not yet presented on an issue to go first. That's not restrictive. We've got 30 minutes and that's all we can do per meeting. I wouldn't have any problem supporting that. I don't see it as restrictive. I see it as a way of making sure we're inclusive.
Ms. Carter?
My only concern with that is how would that look like? How will we do that? Do we keep track of who's been here before? We will have to start monitoring that.
We have a list.
Right. So how will we know on that list? Are you familiar with that? Like who's been?
I had trouble reading names tonight, so I'm not sure.
So how will we go about putting that into
It's a good
practice?
point, but I think we could set up a database.
My understanding is if someone wishes to speak, they have to sign up, correct?
Right.
Yes.
And is that we could set that they would need to call the office ahead of time to sign up, so we have an agenda before 5 o'clock of individuals to speak.
At this time, we allow people to sign up
when they come
before 5 o'clock.
Right. I would encourage them to sign up before 5 o'clock. I think 5 o'clock should definitely be the cutoff, but I guess what I was thinking is that people would contact the administration and get on the agenda to speak.
Dr. Gupta?
I'm not in favor of any kind of restriction. This is a free and open forum, and everybody should be able to speak whether they have spoken before or not. This is it, as I said before, this is a taxpayer funded operation, and we are not in business of policing this business of who is speaking and when they are speaking. The sheet is presented at 12 noon. Anybody can come and sign in if they have a desire to do so. And I've been on this board for more than a year. I've never seen anybody who's been denied opportunity to speak in front of the board if they wanted to. But having said that, so I'm not in favor of any restriction. We are not in a policing business. We are a free and open forum as far as I'm concerned.
Ms. Evans?
I'm not a huge favor of restrictions either. I think for a lot of parents who come speak, it's the only communication they feel like they have or control of their students' education to speak to a group like this. And I don't think we put restrictions on it either. I just don't.
Well, we do have times.
Right. No, I get that. I'm talking about adding any new restriction. I'm with Atul. I don't.
Dr. Nillis, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
You know, this is a business meeting. This is not a public hearing, you know, that's open to anybody. We do allow time for public comments, and they can be helpful. But it's a business meeting, and we're about the business of the school division. I know there've been, it was proposed to make some restrictions. I think what was proposed, previous draft was, I know it was classified as draconian, which I find interesting. Lots of terms these days seem to get weaponized. I had problems after thinking about it, just from the logistics. You speak 2 times in 3 months. Mm-hmm. When does the 3 months start? How are you going to keep track? I'm not to have multiple people come up that we know are associated with a particular organization, but then they say, well, I'm speaking as an individual. It's like, well, no, you're not. If there's one individual from the organization that wants to speak, that's great, but to take up time, I think it's disrespectful to the board and the consideration we're showing the public.
Dr. Brennan? I'll get there.
I think that as one of the people involved in the work group, that as we walk through this whole process, I really think that the goal of the public comments, which I understand is part of a school board process to allow the public to speak, that it should be as non-restrictive as it can be. I think that we want to have people come and speak in an environment where they're welcome, where we respect what they have to say. It takes a lot of effort to stand behind that podium. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, and I think we should allow people to do that without restriction. And I think that, as Dr. Coleman said, at some point in the not too distant past, no one came and spoke at public comments. I think we want to encourage people to come. I think the group that we had here tonight was a great selection of different topics that we were interested in, and it went very well. I'd like to see that continue without any further restrictions.
Ms. Carter?
Well, what I saw, sort of leaning toward what Mike was saying. I see, well, even tonight there was pretty much 2 groups that came that talked about the same things. And if someone from a group come, can that be condensed into one individual or speak for the group instead of hearing the same subject 3 or 4 different times, and just condense it? And we could have had 2 5-minute presentations tonight. One was about the space for the fields, and the other one was about making sure we put into policy protections for the other students that identify as gay or bisexual, whatever. But that's
okay. Dr. Coleman?
Again, getting to the logic that Gary put on the table, I personally would not support any restriction of 4, 5, or 6 people on the same subject, because some people can put their words together in a more effective way to convey the thought than others. So I don't personally have a problem with that. But I do urge the board to hear what Gary is saying. I think that if we already have a 30-minute restriction, we can't go beyond 30 minutes. What if there's somebody with a passionate plea on something that is incredibly pertinent, time sensitive, and they have never had an opportunity to articulate that concern, and will not get that opportunity to articulate that concern once the 30 minutes expires? And we hear repetitively in that same meeting the same thing over from different people with their thoughts. So I kind of hear what you're saying, but then that person won't get an opportunity to share. In that structure, we're saying that that person would be the fresh person, would get an opportunity to speak. We seldom have, as Dr. Brennan just reminded us, going to a point where we exhaust the full 30 minutes. But if that did happen, I do really feel good about, in the event that that would happen, giving a fresh opportunity to someone to speak. That's my final thoughts on the matter.
Well, Dr. Gupta?
You know, end of the day, we are not robots. It's a human-managed system. So if somebody has a passionate plea, we have a very considerate chair who will take that into account and let them speak. Having said that, think about any one of you standing behind the podium who has signed up at 12 noon, and suddenly the Madam Chair says, no, you cannot come to the podium because Christopher has a new topic to speak on, and you're speaking on something which has been already spoken. How humiliating will it be for the citizen who is coming in front of the board? Because this all happens in real time. You're not going to call them at home and say, guess what? You are number 4 now. In the 12 noon when you signed, you are number 1. That will all happen in front of the camera right there in real time. And that will put a lot of people in a place where they don't want to be.
People are encouraged to call or send an email to sign up. And as of today, we had one person who had done that. And by 5 o'clock, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other people sign up. And we were able to get them all in. I thought they were aware of the time limit and how many people. And I think you are right. The one time that we had a large number of people, we allowed everyone to say what they wanted to say. So I really don't see that as a problem in terms of time management. We keep time and we do hold people to the time. If you're supposed to get 3 minutes, I understand the confusion sometimes is that they're signing up as individuals, but they're not. They really are part of a group. And I think that's hard to manage as the chair. And so I think we've addressed, if people sign up when they're supposed to, you could be first on the list.
But I lied, because I said I had my final thought. But I want to say this.
We know better.
Okay. The excellent point that Dr. Gupta is stating. But even when we talk about equity, what if there's somebody out there that doesn't have access to these, whatever it would take to call and do all of that prior to the meeting, like others are able to? And maybe they crawl here to the meeting that night. Okay. Well, I'm hearing us say that, but if the policy, we can't tell other people to follow policies that we intend to violate from the beginning. So if this board is going to have a 30-minute restriction, we are not being very good examples and stewards of leadership to say that we will break our rules, but you can't.
Wait a minute. We do stick to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
rules.
I know
you
that.
know I'm a rule follower.
You know I'm not talking about you, Susan. I'm talking about hypothetically. I hope y'all can understand what I'm saying.
Ms. Evans.
I just
Talking
have
about you, Susan.
a real problem saying your passion
is more
important than their passion, because it's not. I just don't know how we can do that. I don't think. I mean, somebody could sign up and it might be from a group, that hasn't spoken in 3 months and they speak on the same topic. I don't know how you would regulate
Right,
that
regulate
and put them
that.
in the bottom of a line. And his passion is just important as mine. I think everybody's is.
Dr. Gupta, then Mr. Harvey.
You gotta look at it from the lens of the person who is coming in front of the board. As I said before, and let me say it again. If you look at from the lens of the person who is presenting and you tell them as they are walking up to the podium, sorry, Mr. Gupta, you will be number 4 now, you have already spoken. That's very embarrassing, almost humiliating. I'm not using any words which are weaponized. But this is something which put yourself in those shoes and how will you feel, even from an equity lens. That's not fair to that individual putting in front of the camera and pushed out.
Mr. Harvey.
Okay, again, I go back to the issue that it is a meeting, and I agree with Dr. Coleman that's stating that if we're going to say we have a 30-minute time limit, we've got to stick to that 30-minute time limit. It does not matter if one person is more passionate than others about speaking. When 30 minutes is up, 30 minutes is up, because that's what we say is our policy. So who wants to be telling someone who is just as passionate as someone else who has spoken multiple times in the past that they cannot speak because time has run out? What I'm saying is trying to make it more accessible and fair to all persons. I happen to know of an individual who wanted to come a couple meetings ago and speak about bullying. And when she arrived here, we were full and we were talking about a very contentious subject, and she turned around and left. She didn't want to speak at that time, where that was a subject that we had been talking about over and over and over since I've been on this board. I felt sorry that she was not given that opportunity. She did not have that freedom to speak, and she was just as passionate as someone else. So what I'm saying is that if someone has spoken before in the previous meeting, a new speaker would be given a priority in the queue. So if time does run out, it runs out on someone who has had the opportunity to speak previously. That's what I'm suggesting. I think that I felt that was a very fair modification for the original policy that we had, which, as I understand, would have been more in line with how City Council operates. So we are still, I feel like we are very open, that we are very fair, and we allow passionate or non-passionate people the opportunity to speak. I'm just saying that people who have not spoken before should have priority over those who have spoken before who wish to talk about the same subject.
Dr. Gupta.
So let's take a hypothetical example. The sign-up sheet is outside. All the spaces are filled up. I'm walking on Court Street, and I feel like presenting about bullying, which I'm very passionate to speak. I come inside, and the sign-up sheet is full. Madam Chair is not going to decide the bullying is brand new topic till the sheet's in her hand and the school board meeting has already started. And by the time I realized it's not for me, I walked away. So fairness will come if you implement priority when the sign-up sheet is started. You see what I'm saying? So you have a list of topics where you say these are second priority. Short of that, there's always be some unfairness, but this will not be an embarrassment for somebody who wants to speak in front of this board. This prioritizing will cause potential for embarrassment.
Ms. Carter.
Well, there's another option also. I know, I think it's Bedford Campbell, Amherst, that the public comment is directly tied to the agenda. So if the item is not on the agenda, then it's not a public comment. The public comment has to be tied to what the agenda item is. So therefore, you don't have these repeating presenters unless the agenda constantly repeats.
Okay, Dr. Brennan?
That's fair.
Yeah, I totally understand the discussion about the priorities, and I'm a big advocate of Dr. Coleman, and I want to support what he wants to do, and also Mr. Harvey. But I think that I've only been on the board for a little more than 2 years, and so far we have yet, since I've been here, we've yet to fill that 30-minute period yet.
One time in 4 years.
One time in 4 years we've done that. So I think it's a little bit of, what would happen if, and I don't know how, if people come in and sign up, right before the meeting like they do, and we're having trouble reading their names, how we're going to figure out whether they've been there before to make that logistical piece. So I kind of think it hasn't been an issue so far. The person who you talked with was able to speak. She was just kind of overwhelmed by the crowd. There was time for her to speak. It wasn't the time had run out. It was she felt uncomfortable because of the environment. But I think we have time. The 30 minutes seems like it's worked. I again think we don't need to restrict or prioritize as long as we continue to have the ability to hear people speak to us, which I think we're doing. And I think the logistics of figuring that out as people come in right before the meeting to figure out how they spoke in the last 2 or 3 months, I think it'd be very hard.
Any further comments? So we have a policy recommendation in front of us that we have discussed. We've had several comments that said we need to look at maybe putting people who have not spoken at the top of the list. I've heard that from two people. I've heard from Sharon, who said maybe it should be tied to the agenda, and others who said we like it the way we're doing it now, and we just continue to monitor it. Have I pretty much said what has been said? Have I summarized?
I think you did.
All right, so what's the board's pleasure?
When we have finished this topic, there's another question I'd like to raise related to the policy, not specifically to this discussion, but related to public comments and our policy and whether we should consider some other aspect.
Okay.
Is it the time to do that, or is that?
Is it in this policy tonight?
It's regarding public policy, and very briefly, we don't address in this policy what we do for work sessions or for public meetings that we do. And I don't think we really have a policy related to that. So for example, when we had our work session, we don't have a policy for that. Should this apply to that? And the other piece, which I'm going to bring up to Dr. Gupta because he's such a good friend, is that the other thing that City Council does, which is interesting, related to what happened the time when we wanted to have someone else speak, is they have a policy that says that once you go through your policy of you've got time or whatever the restrictions are, boom, then other is, as stipulated above or during public comments, no person shall be permitted to address the council orally except by permission of the council, and such permission should not be granted unless with the consent of a majority of the members of the council present at such meeting. So for example, if we wanted to have somebody to continue with the public sessions, or we felt there was someone in the audience to speak, that goes to the group to say, do you want to do that or not? And then the majority group votes to do it, then it's allowed. And I'm sorry if I'm muddying the waters and we want to postpone this and do it another time, that's fine. But I do want to make sure we're not addressing the work session or public comment.
The work session has kind of evolved because we started the work session as something that was just the board informally could address topics. We could just sit and have conversation.
Yeah.
And then it has evolved not with where we started. And that perhaps is a topic for us to discuss as a board.
Sure.
What do we want these work sessions to be? I don't think we can do it tonight.
Right.
But I do think it's a topic for discussion at the work session because we did not televise them, then we started televising them.
Yeah. Good.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Question to you, Superintendent, based upon what our school board member Brennan just stated. Do we have at present a specific policy or regulation? I know we have several concerning public hearings, etc. But do we have anything that specifically talks about how the board would function as it relates to interacting with presenters that are not from the admin or a part of an admin committee structure? And if not, then I think that we probably could come up with some specific policy or protocol that would help us to know how to navigate through the new terrain of work sessions and people being able to interact. Because however we do it, I'm an advocate for interaction with the public. I feel very stifled when I can't talk to people.
That doesn't happen very often.
So, Ms. Morrison, having said that, if you feel like this is a topic for another video session, I'm totally fine with that. I just wanted to raise those
Yeah.
two for
But I do
discussion,
think
but I'm
it's-
fine to
there
move
are a
on.
number of things about the work session that we,
Sure.
as a board, need to sit down and decide. What is it that we want to accomplish?
Sure.
What we started out doing is not where we are now.
Right.
It's kind of evolved.
Okay.
All right, so the policy that was submitted to us tonight is for action, is the old policy. But there have been several discussions about moving people around, and I'm not sure how this would work for us to say, how would this, I recognize his name, but maybe I don't. That's just from a logistics point. Yes.
You put a checkbox, it just says, have you spoken on the subject before?
Yes or no?
Okay. All right, so we have the agenda, and we've had a recommendation to amend the policy. Dr. Nellis, you look
I guess we don't have a motion, so there's nothing
We-
to...
no, we didn't do a
so there's
motion, so
nothing to
nothing to
amend
amend.
at this point.
I was hoping to avoid that, really hoping to avoid the amendment.
Well, I mean,
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts?
well, I think to prioritize, I think that's reasonable. It wouldn't be, I think you could put some wording in like priority will be given to new speakers in the event the 30-minute time limit for public comments may be exceeded. Worst comes to worst, we can always extend the time. That's always possible. And then I think adding, certainly putting a check mark by the name, I think is reasonable. And it would just be, you would call up in terms of, call up, so.
Dr. Gupta?
When you're going to extend the time, then why do you need the priority for? It's redundant.
That would be an exception.
So
That
except
wouldn't be routine.
So-
I mean, if you're gonna have it be routine, then don't put any time limit on.
But my point is, when you're going to extend the time, then why to prioritize? Because prioritization is to keep within that 30-minute limit.
Mr. Harvey?
My recommendation was to prioritize without extending the 30-minute time limit, because again, I go to the point that Dr. Nellis makes, that this is a business meeting and this board has many items to discuss.
So I'll make a motion to adopt the policy as presented, with the inclusion of priority will be given to new speakers in the event the 30-minute time limit for public comments may be exceeded. That's my motion.
second that motion.
All right, we have a motion
And second.
and a second. Any other discussion?
In the discussion, in my mind, that motion is not calling for any restrictions other than to appreciate time and to also appreciate a greater opportunity for and participation in sharing, in my mind.
Any further discussion? right, we have a-
Prioritization is elimination and restriction. The word prioritization, you can twist and turn and
Okay,
use
we
it
have a
in-
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of adopting this policy for public participation at school board meetings with the addition of priority given to new speakers without extending the limits, please signify by raising your hand. Thank you. All right, all opposed? All right, so that motion is defeated. Do I have a second motion, an additional motion?
Yes, I typically do not do this, but I'm a member of that work group, and I move that we will adopt what has been presented originally, now that everyone has had an opportunity to share and give their participating thoughts.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Brennan? Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Dr. Nellis, thank you. All right, that takes us to Lynchburg City School Board policy updates.
These are policies from, sorry, this is the second reading of these policies, which went through the instruction and program work group. And they are primarily VSBA changes. I will just note that the suicide prevention policy, JHH, the regulation is not up for adoption tonight. The work group did review the regulation, and that should be forthcoming in November.
Right, so we're just looking at the
We're just
policies,
looking
not
at
that read.
policies.
Okay. All right. This is up for action tonight. Do we have any discussion? Any questions? It's mostly language. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the instruction and program review updates?
I move that we approve the instruction.
Ms. Carter, thank you. Ms. Evans, second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that moves us to new. Yes.
Excellent.
New business, Health Advisory Board Committee, 2019 through 2020.
Oh, sorry. Yes, what you have in front of you is the recommendations for members, community members who would like to serve on our Health Advisory Board under the direction of Ms. Ann Gentry. And that is up for action tonight.
Board questions or comments?
Move to approve the advisory board as presented.
Okay, second.
Second.
Dr. Nillis moved and Dr. Britton second. Comments? Dr. Gupta, did you have a question?
Want to make sure in future we add some PAs and NPs, as we move forward. Because that's the changing face of healthcare, and we have programs.
All right, we have a motion and second. We've had discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Capital Improvement Program updates. Dr. Copeland.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Pull things up on the screen since it's a lot to look at as I talk through it. So, 5 years worth of capital improvement projects on the sheets that were provided to you in the board packet. 1 year of funding is how the city approaches the funding. So 4 years of what it looks like in the future, 1 year is what everybody's focused in on for this budget cycle. So there's always recurring things related to mechanical and electrical. For next year, the Deerington chiller would be slated for replacement, and we need to start investigating what the next version of heat is going to be at Dunbar Middle School. So we have some funds earmarked over a couple of years to look at whether we go with a new heating system or use the traditional steam system that's there and upgrade and replace it. So we want to start looking at that. Towards the bottom third of that page, you can see the funding spread over 2 years for a practice field at EC Glass. And I've got a picture of that at the end of this so you can kind of get an idea of where it sits on the campus. Roof replacements, lots of roof replacements over the next 12 months. Paul Munro's roof, basically half of Lincoln Elementary School. Dunbar Middle School, the west building has a low roof area, so if you've ever been on the second or the third floor at Dunbar, you can look out some of the interior windows. There's some CTE classrooms and things like that that are down on the first floor. That low roof area needs to be replaced. And then Sheffield Elementary School, the addition that was put on in 2001, which is where the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades are, that section needs a new roof. We did the other part of the building a couple of years ago. So that's the majority of the CIP. We have a recurring item that we carry every year for upgrade of fencing and replacement of paving. An example of what that money does is if you've been by Heritage Elementary School, they've had their whole front parking lot repaved this past summer. Need to kind of continue to program money to look at playgrounds. Playground equipment is constantly changing. Playground safety is constantly changing. So that's going to be a consistent thing that I'll include year after year. So the total request to the city will be right under $3.7 million, covering HVAC systems, starting in the athletic field, significant roof work, paving, fencing, and some playgrounds. The bottom line on the sheet that's up there right now is just kind of an earmark of we always let the city know if they're willing to help us out with school buses, we'll gladly take some money. Sometimes that works in our favor, sometimes it doesn't. Then I wanted you to see the EC Glass field. So let me orient you real quick. At the very bottom of the screen is the outfield fence of the baseball field, and you can actually see the light that sits there in left field of the baseball field. You can see the tennis courts, obviously. So the area that we're looking at is that lower field that's referred to as the throwing field in the back corner of the EC Glass property. Mr. Thompson and I took a look at it last spring, and if we take the dirt from the high ground and move it to the low ground and put in an artificial turf, that outline that you see there is a 100-yard field by 60 yards wide. So we do get the benefit of a significant practice surface. We will not lose anything from the throwing aspect of track and field, and that we will keep those throwing points for discus and shot put anchored in the corners of those fields to continue to support. When these pictures were taken, you can actually see the discus arc in the bottom left corner is painted on the field. There's a discus and a shot put throwing area in the top left corner, and then both disc and shot put on the top right corner of that field layout. So it's space that is utilized to support just one thing, track and field throwing sports. We can add a field and significantly increase the capacity to keep students and support our field-based athletics on campus. So that's kind of the concept that we are putting forward. Overall cost for doing this work and putting artificial turf down. Turf is what makes it work when you're playing sports year-round. You've got to have an artificial surface. Total cost is around $1.2 million. So I want everybody to kind of get a visual of where it was located.
And the throwers will not lose their practice areas?
No, ma'am. The throwers will not lose their practice area, and one of the concepts that we'll investigate is that there's a significant height difference between where the baseball field is now and where this lower field is. So as we level that, we've still got to have some grading to take care of the change in elevation, and we will look to install some type of a seating arrangement, whether it's tiered with block and then you have grass seating areas where people can set up chairs, or you actually install seating so that folks that are spectators for the throwing sports kind of make a throwing sport arena out of one of the corners. Do something like that to make it more appealing. There were some students that came to us maybe 6 years ago, about the time that Mr. Latham had left there. He still coaches there for throwing sports, and they had a concept of trying to convert that area into a throwing complex. So we're going to kind of take their aspect of supporting the throwing sports and the spectator side of that, and then also add to it a practice field. So I think we'll get both look and feel and support for the campus.
What will you do about that road? Because, I mean, people use it now.
I would prefer that people not use an interior field. So we would basically abandon it.
Okay.
Dr. Gupta?
Does it take care of the problem the presenters had today, or it'll be
this is the solution
that's
to
a solution
what
for
they were here speaking about. It's been something that we've looked at for several years, and finally we just got the right people aligned and figured out that we can get this done if we can get the funding. It will change though. That whole back corner of the campus is very underutilized. The fencing's in need of repair. There's lots of scrub bushes that have grown up So we'll use this as an opportunity to kind of clean up everything, put new fencing in, and give it a really...
Just saying. Dr. Coleman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am overjoyed, Dr. Copeland, that this is being presented. This is not a fresh issue, as has been stated, and as I had previously stated, that there was an athletic committee at one point. I know the school board member Charlie White and others have been talking about this. I think I saw him here tonight, and others. And so this is a really good thing that I totally support. That whether we're voting on it or not tonight, I certainly do support this as we continue to improve our athletic equity.
Thank you very much. Dr. Brennan, do you have more?
I'll answer any questions. I just had one closing comment.
Okay. Go ahead and close.
So if you, if you haven't seen what happens on our campuses in the fall, youth sports is big in the city. So right now, my example of the benefit of having multiple fields and how we support the youth sports activities, go to Heritage High School on a Saturday and you're going to see YMCA soccer on the field across the creek, and then you're going to see Hill City Youth football playing, and it's like there's no parking within a half mile of Heritage High School on a Saturday morning. So this will also help the city out with youth sports and being able to support everything across the city.
That's great. Dr. Brennan?
Thanks very much. You've been very patient sitting through all this time and coming up with this presentation. I'm sorry I missed the slip between the $1.2 million. That the cost for that is so expensive because of the grading and because of the material you're putting down. And then secondly, as a capital improvement project, is this funded by the city?
That is, it is on the list to go forward to the city for support.
Okay, all right. And can you just briefly say that the $1.2 million, the cost for that is so expensive because?
We want to ensure that it has an artificial playing surface on it, so it supports practice, year-round practice. So right now, even though baseball isn't in its official practice season, or the spring sports aren't, they have out-of-season practice. And if you go back to when Glass had a supposed grass field, there was so much use on that field. You can see pictures of there was more dirt than there was grass.
It was hard.
So we know that we need a surface that can stand up to 5 to 6 hours of use every day of the school year and weekend use, and that's got to be an artificial surface. So.
Ms. Carter?
What's the timeline again, or did you say this already?
We would request $550,000 that would come to us in July of 2020, and then stretch the rest of the funding would come to us in July of 2021. So that gives us a cycle time to kind of design it, hit the spring when the weather clears up, start doing the work. You've got $550,000 worth of money in the bank, and then about the time you finish the project, July 1st, the other $650 shows up, you pay out the rest of the project, and hopefully by the start of the school year in 2021, we'd have a nice surface.
Dr. Gupta?
But I'm not going to do that. But the Heritage Elementary Gymnasium, are they still in the CIP, or we are not proposing to the city for funding?
I do not have any additional funding in this request to go forward for another gym. I think there's an opportunity, and I think we'll have that discussion at the Finance Committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Copeland? This is for information tonight, so I don't know where I am. Thank you. All right, Lynchburg City School Board Section 4 Finance. Ms. Conage.
This is a combo, Tim and Crystal.
Okay.
Combo, and you all have a binder full of Section 4 policies which were converted to VSBA policies. Inside there is a table of contents, similar to how we've done before with other policies. We're in the process of converting. This does not represent all of the policies that the fiscal work group worked on, but just the ones that we reviewed and came across to say, yes, we can switch this to the new VSBA policy. There is a lot to read, but I will just point out some highlights for you by page, and this is for information tonight, thorough review over the next month, and then any questions that you may have. But if you go to page 88 in your binder, which is the conversion to the small purchases, one of the recommendations that we made is to raise the amount that requires our staff to get competitive bidding. Right now, that amount is about $1,000.
Correct.
And almost everything is $1,001, which means they have to constantly get bids for some things. So you'll see in our policy here that we've raised that to be for more than $2,500 or up to $2,500, and then you'll see other limits for $5,000 and things. So we wanted to just bump it up a little bit. Cool. You look like you have a question, Dr.
No, I'm just this is unnecessary bureaucracy. Is there where you want to push it faster, or you want to wait till next week?
We want to see. We want to test drive it a little, see what happens there, and then it's lower than what the city does, but we still are cautiously proceeding. How's that? Other thing that I wanted to point out on page 126. I'm sorry, not 126. Went too far. 98. You guys will like this one because you've been asking for it. On page 98, which is our purchasing cards, or our fondly known as P cards. The board has been requesting P cards. Some of you have expressed some concern when you're traveling the school board and have to use your credit card. You didn't have the power, but what we did here in the first paragraph, you can see a purchasing card may be used by designated Lynchburg City School employees. What was missing was the school board members. So we are making a recommendation to include that language, which would allow coverage and all of the fun that comes with monitoring a P card for school board members as well. If you skip ahead to 126, and this is really just talking about vendor relations, and particularly as you go to conferences, you develop relationships with vendors, and everybody has a product and they want to get in there and they want to sell. And yes, who has the authority to really make those decisions? So we're trying to clean up the authority in terms of having vendors come and speak to staff, perhaps use instructional time. That really should go through me and the directors and be cleared and aligned with our strategic plan, and that saves us having multiple vendors just approach a school and demand school time. So there's a little bit of cleanup there just to make sure that everything is in line with our strategic plan and processes. And on page 164, there is a question just about cash in schools and what the procedures are in terms of our staff, cash, and we put or checks, because sometimes people are collecting checks. And what do you do with that money? This comes up when we have our audit, and we want to make sure we have a clean audit. So we did add, not just for cash, but checks too should follow this protocol. And many of our schools, particularly our secondary schools, have a designated school bookkeeper or school finance officer. Our elementary schools do share, so we added some language to include the school bookkeeper as being one of those people who can have the money. So that's just a snapshot of some of the things that I think we've been a couple months now discussing a lot of this. And I don't know, Kim, if I covered most of what we talked about.
Yeah. Any questions? Once you have the time to look at it, maybe get them back. Get your leisure.
It's great vacation material. I highly recommend it.
I was going to say one other comment is on page 19, on the backside of the annual budget, there is a notional calendar for what happens in terms of the budget process.
Any other comments, questions? That then moves us to the school board retreat agenda, and I gave each of you one. This is Dr. Edwards and Dr. Coleman and I worked on this and we're bringing it to you tonight for comments and approval. We were going to, thanks to Dr. Gupta, we're having a retreat on October the 11th at the University of Lynchburg in Schule Hall Room 231. We're having breakfast, and the first topic would be kind of outline of the day and how things are going to operate. The second is a chat and chew breakfast. That's We're working while we're chewing. And that's where we're going to go over the school board norms that we discussed at our training at VSBA. We need to finalize that and look at approving them. And then we're going to laminate them and put them at everybody's taped to front of you so that we have them after we do that. From 8:30 to 9:30, strategic plan goal 3, fiscal responsibilities. A lot of the topics that you submitted to us and our board clerk involved the fiscal responsibility of the board. We really wanted to dive deeper into budget and finance, and this will be that opportunity to do that. The first will be, we'll overview, like we did tonight, the goals and strategies, and I think you'll be really happy to see the amount of work that's been done. Then we have the opportunity to dig into what we want to know. From 9:30 to 10:30, personal growth, the same kind of thing, but one of the topics that we received a great deal of interest is recruitment and retention. And so we're going to really dig into that after we go over the personal growth strategic plan. From 10:30 to 10:45, we're going to have a comfort break, and we're not going to chat and chew. We're going to actually take a break. And then from 10:45 to 12, strategic plan goals, student growth, overview objectives and strategies, deeper dive into program transformation, as what are we doing to adapt our programs to help our students achieve and that we can raise the achievement level of our students. From 12 to 1, we have a chat and chew lunch, and that's where we will talk about the Adopt a School. You'll get suggestions. Dr. Brennan and I were talking about how to set up, we as a board, what this means, what we can and shouldn't do, or can, and I will also say that really worked hard to give people what they wanted. And if there's a school that you want and someone else has it, that's for you to negotiate with them. And then you tell us that you made that swap. Don't come to me and say I want a different school. I'm excited about the legislative advocacy part, having Mr. Kessler come down and go into it with us, how is the best way to proceed, what are options that we have that we've not taken advantage of in the past, and then we have our own agenda, that the topics that we've developed. Members of that committee have worked very hard to come up with, I think, are really good goals and things that we want to achieve for our students. 5-minute closure. And you know that won't happen, but we're going to try to stick to this so that we can get out of there at a reasonable hour that day. Now, we're open. It's casual attire, comfortable shoes. Wear some part of orange because we're going to have our picture taken to support the anti-bullying campaign that we're initiating this month. So, topics, suggestions. I think you can see from the work where Dr. Edwards presented tonight on the strategic plan how much work and the coordination with other goals and plans. It's really quite phenomenal. Thank you. Dr. Coleman.
And one piece I would add for Mr. Kessler, Bob, did you say you were going to forward the legislative agenda to everybody for review prior to?
Yes.
So if there's a pertinent question that you have about any of those items and you want more information, insight, understanding of, be prepared to raise those questions to him, because that's also a part of why he's coming, so that we can properly understand what those items are to make the appropriate determinations as to if that really is something that we feel is a top priority for us or not.
Dr. Gupta.
In personal report, could we get information about diversity of applicants, like EEOC type data you may be collecting at the back end from each applicant?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of information. Tell me again what you're asking for.
Right now we get who is hired, but in terms of applicants, what's the distribution, how many minority candidates, have we had in those positions, and how many were hired over the years? Do you have that data or it's not?
I can try my best.
Okay.
When you have 117 teachers hired, it's going to be hard to look at each that's interviewed.
'Cause there has been a concern that are we getting the role models for our kids? Are we getting a reasonable amount of black male and females?
I'm going to share that with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Share all that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do you all think this looks,
Looks great.
do you?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, it's team.
So what's the contingency plan when going through the strategic plan goals, that they both go twice as long? The first two go twice as long as what's
We are going to
scheduled?
stick to the time, and we're
Okay.
going to each have our little flags that we
Okay.
can hold up if somebody's taking up too much of our time.
We forgot to mention the backup plan. So
Yes.
glad you mentioned that, because as we're going through, let's say the strategic plan goes and you see a section and it's not budget or finance, it might
Oh,
be
good. Thank you for that.
capital
Capital
improvement is
improvement.
one of the ones that you'll see under fiscal, and you might I want a little bit more information about the practice fields or whatever. What we're planning on doing, that's why I said wear comfortable shoes, because I'm gonna move you from room to room to room. What we're planning on doing is having on the walls places where we can say, where do we want a deeper dive? And we recognize that we only have so much time, and even with this, we can't get into everything, so it may be something that you say, and I'm glad we talked about reinventing the work session and defining it. You may say, we want a work session on 3.2.1, so we're not going over it. That will help us
We'll
stay
stick
on,
the topics up on the,
stick to top.
yeah,
time.
so that we have it.
And then what we really can do, because the teacher in me is like, once you get a list of what you want, we have the months of November, December, I don't know which all that we have work sessions. You can start to
Plan what
manage
we wanted.
expectations and move some things around and just
good.
say. This day, I just need to say, October 11th is also the Division PD Day. So last year we had a full arsenal of directors with us and everybody. They will all be with the teaching staff on that day. So you have the team of Edwards and Copeland and Laconage and G that will be there with you on that day, while all of the directors will be assisting with professional development with the staff.
And that's why we were pretty specific with the topics that we could go into. Okay, sound good?
Excellent.
Okay. Yay. I don't need to take a formal vote on that, do I? Do I, Sharon?
Now, will we have these strategic plans ahead of time?
I'm going to try to get all that to you, yes.
That would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay. Superintendent's comments.
Sure. Okay. First, I'd just like to say thanks to Chris and Ian, and Chris is still here, so he is a trooper for staying both excellent presentations, and as Ms. Morrison said, it is much more rich when the students are here and engaged. And you just help me cross things off my report, because you get so much of that out that it shortens my report a little bit on what I have to do. But we love the student voice, so keep it coming. And I love the challenge piece. So, and she's serious about the challenge. So just know. The other thing I'd like to say is just again, one more kudos to Paul Munro for being a National Blue Ribbon school, but along those lines, also 13 of our schools are fully accredited, which is just wonderful. Lots of hard work and teamwork went into that and continue to go into that. We, like I said on the press release, we saw some double-digit gains in areas, so we are taking that data and breaking it all apart. We're looking for those places where it just really popped and what was responsible for that. And there's already conversation within schools and between schools about some of the successful things that went on. So looking forward to more dialogue about that and just much more data. We talked about Bullying Prevention Month, and it is also from September 15th to October 15th is National Hispanic Heritage Month, and a lot of our schools are doing activities and engaging students to recognize the contributions of our Latina population and just recognize the National Hispanic Heritage Month. Tomorrow is National Custodial Recognition Day. So if you've ever been in our buildings like I have and you look down and you go look at the floor and say, I look good because the floor is that shiny and clean, or you just notice that our custodial staff does a great job of just maintaining our facilities and keeping them clean and just being responsive. And it's kind of like the magic that you don't see happening, but it happens because they're in the buildings. Please give a shout out to them tomorrow. Excited about October 8th. Hope you all will be there because the Secretary of Agriculture will be with us, and this is going to be a big deal event. It just seems to be getting bigger and bigger at Perrymont at October 8th, 11:30 to 1. Secretary Ring will be here to participate in a roundtable about our creamery project that we have with the local creamery, but also farm to school. So talking about some of the initiatives and things that are going on at Perrymont. So we're excited about that and all of the wonderful work that has happened with that. It's been pretty busy with school starting and opening, having so much going on. The kids did a great job of telling you some of the wonderful things that are happening. And if you ever need a date night between the sports, the activities, the arts, we have you covered for very low price. So really come out and join us at any of our activities. I was at the EC Glass homecoming game with the class of '89, who was in full force there. So there's a lot of school spirit for even those who graduated from a while ago still come back and join us. I like to say this past month I've been living on the edge, literally on the edge, having done the Humankind Over the Edge bucket list. Check that off. Nothing like being horizontal 20 stories up, leaning over the bank of the James. But what a wonderful experience, and what a wonderful experience for me to have done that. But so appreciative. I do want to give a thank you to everyone who supported me, who donated to the fundraiser. It was for a very good cause. My husband and I raised over $2,000 for Humankind and their efforts in supporting our families. So that was great. And during that time between being over the edge, I decided that I would run 2 half marathons and the Virginia 10-miler. And I will take the Philly half marathon and the Virginia Beach half marathon over the 10-miler any day, because I still can't get up Langhorne Road. But what was really nice about running the 10-miler this past weekend was all of the staff, their LCS was representing between the 10 and the 4-mile and the 4-mile walk. But all the kids that were out there, I mean, most of them were way past me, but it was really great. Like cross-country team was out there, and just smiles and celebrations. So it's a nice community thing, and I'm not by far a really great runner, but I just love being out there and being part of that. So that was great. I visited Dunbar Middle School 8th graders as they were on the James River. And I didn't get in the boat because it was the same day I had to do a couple press releases, so I couldn't get the whole water experience. Next time I will. But what a wonderful program and what a wonderful experience for our kids, and just talking with them, how many of them have had this outdoor experience. And for some of them, it was their first time. And it was a great time. So anytime we can provide that and connect it to the curriculum is wonderful. I talked a little bit about joining the Economic Development and Tourism group for their presentation for their one-year outcomes. Very packed presentation, and they're doing some good work there. That is the one that I am the liaison for. Dr. Copeland is the liaison for the City Schools Task Force, and you had a meeting today and worked with them, and Ms. Reeves is back there. She's the liaison for the Human Collaborative, which is a city group of all the city employees, and she's the liaison that works with that group. So we have a lot of city school connections that just fit nicely with our goal for there as well. Continuing to work on a strategic plan, you know that, so I hope to have all of this information for you before we get to the retreat so you can have it and read it. And just a couple things coming up. Our third graders are going to the Point of Honor. It's a field trip coming up, and we like to keep our kids in the community. That's one of the things that you saw on our goals. And I will be meeting at the end of this week with the history teachers at Glass and at Heritage. One of the things that I would like to do in advance of my work on the commission is talk to our staff. I'd love to get a group of students, so I'm going to give you another challenge, just to talk about how we're teaching African American history and the perspective of the teachers who teach it, the students who receive it, the community members who have experienced it and lived it. So I'm kind of doing an informal tour just to learn as much as I can and be as informed as I can so that we can really make a positive difference in when we go forward. I think that's it for me.
Okay, board comments. Ms. Evans? I'm going around so that I don't miss anyone this time. Ms. Evans? Dr. Gupta?
I'd like to first, Ms. Hope. Would you like to introduce yourself? You've been silent.
Yes. Well, my name is Hope Towns, and I'm an attorney with the City Attorney's Office. Nora Dunn, who is your former board attorney, retired yesterday. So I will be taking over for her, so I ask for a little bit of grace. But I look forward to meeting you all. I also, after the meeting, just have my card with my number, so you all could have that, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. But thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much.
And I wanted to acknowledge Dr. Copeland. I texted you 2 weeks ago. There was an accident on Wards Ferry Road, pretty bad accident, and it was heartening to see Dr. Copeland standing there helping families out when we were still waiting for cops. And our city school kids were bringing in water. I'm assuming they were from Governor School, or they were from?
There was a Heritage High School theater yard sale that was going on, and they had a set building day, so they were the students. They were coming down to put signs on the corner, and they went back and got water for the family. One of the families had 2 Bass Elementary kids that were going to Hill City Youth football game and got tied up in the accident, so she made arrangements. Somebody came and picked up the kids. They went to the game. The police finally showed up,
And there were no
they
major
got on with their
injuries.
Saturday. Nobody got hurt.
Good.
Physically happened about 6 feet in front of me as my daughter and I were going through the intersection. So it was a mess.
Thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Brennan?
Brief comments regarding the Department of Transportation. So I'm so glad Mr. A has been sitting with us this evening. One is that there apparently is a recent initiative by Governor Northam and by the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality talking about funding for electric school buses out of a fund they have, a $20 million fund from the Volkswagen problem that they had with their diesel fuel. So they will reimburse up to $265,000 for purchase of electric school buses. This is going to start, they start taking applications in February, March 2020. They're going to go by the oldest buses first, and I expect we've probably got a few old buses, so I'd love to see if there's any interest or any availability for that. And then also related to Department of Transportation, as Dr. Ozer would say, there was a great turnout for the Virginia 10 miler. My other hat that I wear is sponsorship chairman, and one of our sponsors is Lynchburg City Schools, because they have transported all the people that go from that walk or run to Randolph College to get back to Glass, which is more than everybody runs in the 10 milers. There are about 1,500 people in the 10 miler event. There's more than that actually get transported, and so we always like to recognize Lynchburg City Schools with a plaque, so if I can leave that with Dr. Edwards, and she will do as she wants. And congratulations to everybody who ran it and all the staff that were there, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
Okay. First off, I'd like to give a shout out and a big thank you to Ms. Lipscomb's 4th and 5th grade art classes at T.C. Miller. About 2 weeks ago, myself and Katie Adder, one of the people from my office, had the opportunity to meet with the students and talk about architectural elevations in the construction of their light towers, lighthouses, and bird feeders. So at an upcoming board meeting, I'm going to share with the students their final projects with you, because it's pretty exciting. Not only are they combining the art of the design and what the outside look like, but they're also combining STEM. They're going to light these lighthouses up. So I'm really excited to see that. They're going to wire them so they're actually working. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. But got this great card from all the students, and I thought that was just really impressive. Also, today I completed the final stage of new board member training, and I just wanted to say I'm just totally impressed with all of the departments within our school system and all the staff and the people that really serve our students. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do is at each board meeting, I'm going to try to pick a department and actually kind of give some kudos to them and let people in the community know a little bit about them. So tonight I wanted to start off with facilities under the supervision of Deputy Superintendent Dr. Copeland and Director of Facilities Steve Gatsky. Department is made up of facilities administration, which includes purchasing. They have building maintenance, grounds, paint crew, environmental, and warehouse. It's important to note that building maintenance has a crew of approximately 23 people, and they respond to over 4,000 work orders in any given year. And that is just reactionary work orders. That does not include the planned work orders that they accomplish. So that's just amazing. They have 2 shifts, and these folks work just incredible. Our grounds crew is made up of 7 members that cover all of our school facilities. And that I've passed these guys out at Bedford Hills and saw them, and I thought it was just one group of, maybe there are a couple other crews around, but it's just one crew that does all of this. So hats off to them. They do a great job. So I just wanted to try to pass along some of the information that I learned during this training so that members of our community can understand, the special people that we have within our school system that are doing a great job, that some of them are behind the scenes, but they really do serve our students on a daily basis. So thank you to them.
Thank you. Ms. Carter?
Just want to say again, congratulations to Paul Munro, and I know we're looking at how we can replicate that and have more blue ribbon schools.
It's hard work.
Yes, it's great.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nilles, do you have comments? Okay. Dr. Coleman?
I would also like to welcome Attorney Hope Towns, and I know that the chair will be leading us in doing something for Nora.
Yes.
And just the incredible service that she's provided. And one of the things that I'm looking forward to, I believe, as we have advocated for that going forward, that our school board attorney will join us in our school board meetings and help support us when you can. Yes, indeed. So
I don't know how long they usually last.
it's not always this long. No. And then you can scoot out with whatever may be necessary.
This is long.
But that is something that we've been advocating for, and I'm very happy about that. I do apologize for not being at the 10 miler, but I had to speak in Houston, and I just wanted to say on the plane going, I sat beside a school psychologist from Charlotte who may be interested in relocating to the area. And on the way back, I sat by a school teacher from Charlotte who knows Casey Crabb, and they worked together, and I thought that was incredible. And while I was there, school board member Derek Parley called me and wanted me to tell you all hi.
Oh.
I'm excited about being at Paul Munro the other day. Last week was incredible to see hundreds of students come together over at Liberty as a part of the Food for Thought, and they prepared thousands of bags that will go out in terms of food insufficiencies and insecurities, rather, for the weekends. And so we've got so much help. I'm happy to hear about the fields for glass, and hopefully this athletic committee can find its way. Chair Morrison, I try to be obedient. You said have something on orange, so I changed suits and put on this as best I could, the tie and this, and I got my ribbon, and I heard those advocates during the public comments. And I want to thank Dan Harrison for coming out, and I thought that was wonderful. And I want to close agreeing with the chair and the superintendent. Young man, you have stayed the entire meeting. Your report was top-notch in both of them, but I really respect that.
Thank you. I have just a few reminders. The school board First Amendment webinar, October 10th from 12 to 1 at Mr. Harvey's office. I ask that you all please let us know so that our board clerk can send out the menu from Depot, and we can order that in. It lasts 1 hour, and so you'll need to be there before 12. I want to give a shout out to Cindy Babb with her Did You Know newsletter that goes out. It is great, and I hope people do take the time to read what the kids are saying about school and what they're there to do. But it's well done, and I very much appreciate it. And I hope that we can get it out to everyone in the city eventually. But,
Out of council.
oh, okay. So, all right. So that's all I have. Thank you all for tonight. Our next item is the notice of closed meeting. The school board needs to convene a closed meeting as permitted by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A2, discussion or consideration of admission of disciplinary matters or any other matters that would involve the disclosure of information contained in the scholastic record concerning a student. Is there a motion to convene into a closed meeting?
I move that we convene.
Ms. Carter? Is there,
Second.
and there's a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are going to take a break so that they can break down. We're going to stay in here.